Hello, my name is Diego Cervantes, and today I'm gonna talk you about the chapter number 1 of biology, the science of biology. First of all, what is science? Well, science is an organized way of gathering and analyzing evidence about the natural world. It is a way of observing, a way of thinking, and a way of knowing about this world, the world where we live. Science is a process, not a thing. Science never stands still. Almost every major scientific discovery raises more questions than it answers. One goal of science is to provide natural explanations for events in the natural world. Another goal of science is to understand patterns in nature and to make useful predictions about the natural events. Observation is the act of noticing and describing events or processes in a careful and orderly way. An inference is a logical interpretation based on what scientists already know. Hypothesis is a scientific explanation for a set of observations that can be tested in ways that support or reject. A controlled experiment is an experiment in which only one variable is changed. This variable change in the experiment is the independent variable. The variable that is observed and responds to the independent variable is the dependent variable. The independent variable is also called the manipulated variable, and the dependent variable is also called the responding variable. The independent variable is manipulating the dependent variable. Scientists make detailed records of experimental observations, gathering information called data. A control group is exposed to the same conditions as the experimental group, except for one independent variable. Scientists use experimental data as evidence to support, refute, or revise the hypothesis being tested, and to draw a valid conclusion. Okay, for the scientific methodology, first we make an initial observation, then we create a hypothesis, then we make the experiment, then we observe it and analyze the data, then we make an interpretation. Okay, if the hypothesis is not supported, we need to make a new hypothesis, a new experiment, and a new observation. And then, when the final hypothesis is supported, then we conclude this experiment. What happens when experiments are not possible? It is not always possible to test a hypothesis with an experiment. In some of these cases, researchers devise hypotheses that can be tested by observations. Which are the scientific attitudes? The scientific attitudes are skepticism, open-mindedness, and creativity. Skepticism means that they question existing ideas and hypotheses. Open-mindedness. They accept different ideas that may not agree with their hypothesis. Creativity is to think creatively to design experiments that yield accurate data. Peer review. Peer review is when scientists share their findings with the scientific community by publishing articles that have undergone peer review. Okay, why is important peer review? Peer review allows researchers to share ideas and to test and evaluate each other's work. Scientific theory is a well-tested explanation that unifies a broad range of observations and hypotheses, and that enables scientists to make accurate predictions about new situations. The relationship between science and society is that using science involves understanding its context in society and its limitations. Bias is a particular preference or point of view that is personal, rather than scientific. Biology is the study of life. What characteristics do all living things share, just like you and me? Living things are made up of basic units called cells, are based on a universal genetic code, obtain and use materials and energy, grow and develop, reproduce, respond to their environment, maintain a stable internal environment, and change over time. DNA is a genetic code written in a molecule. A stimulus is a signal to which an organism responds. Homeostasis is when an organism keeps their internal environment relatively stable. Sexual reproduction is when cells from two parents unite to form the first cells of a new organism. Asexual reproduction is when a single organism produces offspring identical to itself. Metabolism is when an organism builds up or breaks down materials. Cellular basis of life states that living things are made up of cells. Information and heredity states that living things are based on a universal genetic code. Matter and energy states that living things use and obtain materials and energy. Grow, development, and reproduce states that all living things grow, develop, and reproduce. Evolution states that living things evolve. Structure and function. Each major group of organisms has evolved its own particular body part called toolkit. Unity and diversity of life. Life takes an almost unbelievable variety of forms, and that all living things are fundamentally similar at the molecular level. Interdependence in nature states that all forms of life on Earth are connected into. Always remember that science is not a list of facts, it's a way of knowing.